now.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar this morning on unlocking the potential of Azure OpenAI and exploring the benefits and use cases. We've got a number of attendees already online with us this morning. We're just going to give it one more minute as the counter goes up, and then we'll begin at just 2 minutes past 11. So thank you for joining, and just one more minute and we'll get started. Well, there we are. We're 2 minutes past 11. So a warm welcome from Microsoft. Thank you for joining our webinar this morning. My name is Richard Ellis. I'm General Manager of the UK SMC business here for Microsoft. It's my great pleasure to do the introduction to this morning's webinar on unlocking the potential of Azure OpenAI and exploring the benefits and use cases. I'm joined this morning by two of my esteemed colleagues, Sunita Cannon, who's our Worldwide AI Strategy Lead, and Barak Ozar, who's our Cloud Solution Architect in our SMC team here in the UK. We'll be taking you through the session this morning. Can we just go to the next slide? Just let the slide transitions come in. In terms of the agenda this morning, we'll run through from now until the top of the hour. It is a presentation format today versus a Q&A session. So unfortunately, we don't have Q&A today, but at the end, we'll share with you a way of getting in touch with your account team who can answer the questions and take forward the conversation. So hopefully, if the slides are refreshing for you, on the screen, you'll have today's agenda. So there's an introduction and quick look into the Azure OpenAI partnership. We'll then get into exploring the core features of the Azure and OpenAI services and the various use cases. We'll get into the when and why use cases around those services. And what you're doing, we'll do a brief demonstration of the technology in action and the real-world business cases. And as I said, we'll close with some of the next steps and how you can find more resources, but also engage with the account team who look after you. So that's the agenda. Just before we get into the deep dive on it, I've just got a couple of slides just to ground us and introduce us to the conversation today. Now, I can see we've got a lot of people on the call today, and I'm sure there'll be a great variation between you as to when you were introduced. So either the work from OpenAI or the Microsoft and OpenAI partnership. And if you were an early adopter and you were looking at ChatGPT back in November or the end of November, you may have been in ChatGPT 3.5. But as we saw millions of people swarm towards the service, you may have joined later in the start of this year, or even just in ChatGPT 4 when it was released on the 14th of March. Just one thing, so I need to cover a bit of this later, but just from an overview perspective, this isn't a new partnership from Microsoft. This is an ongoing partnership. And in fact, back on the 23rd of January this year, we did announce the third phase of our long-term partnership with OpenAI with a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar investment to accelerate the AI work they're doing and ensure these benefits are broadly shared with the world alongside Microsoft's mission statement to empower everybody and every person on the planet to achieve more. The agreement follows previous agreements in 2019 and 2021. As I said, it extends that ongoing collaboration between the two organizations. It breaks down into three main areas. Supercomputing at scale. Microsoft will increase our investments in the development of specialized supercomputing resources to accelerate OpenAI's work. That's really crucial as we think about the larger and larger models they're using. That does require more and more compute power, and we have a commitment for that in our partnership. We'll also look at the new AI-powered experiences, and Microsoft will deploy OpenAI's models across our consumer and enterprise products, and we'll be introducing new categories of digital experiences built on OpenAI's technologies. Now, you may have seen some of our announcements over the last few weeks around our Copilot functionality, both in our Microsoft 365 services and most recently in Dynamics. So that's where that part of the partnership comes in. And the final part is we are the exclusive cloud provider to OpenAI services. So whether you're using those services through us or through others, all of the OpenAI workloads run on Azure from their research through to production. So it's an extensive partnership and it's not new. and it's one that we continue to invest heavily in as we go forward. Before we get into further detail, though, it's worth just noting the journey through machine learning and AI is obviously not new, and it's not new to Microsoft. In fact, if you go back 6 years to 2017, Satya Nadella, our CEO, penned an article in Slate magazine titled "The Partnership of the Future," and the article really began to introduce the concepts of transparency, efficiency, but not at the extent of the dignity of people, intelligent privacy, algorithmic accountability, and the protection against bias when it comes to AI. So from a very early stage, Microsoft have been really intense on this theory of responsible AI. We've then formed our AI ethics committees internally, which are constantly evaluating our approach and use of AI across our stack. And this has really culminated. There was a book from Brad Smith, our president, in 2019 called Tools and Weapons. I'm sure many of you on the call may have read this book. If you haven't, I think it's a great starting place for yourself or others in the business to really understand the power of technology, but also our responsibilities for using it. You can see the quote on the screen. I won't read that one to you. The quote I think that's really relevant, though, to today and to where we are with AI is there's a quote in the book from Brad that technology innovation is not going to slow down. The work to manage it needs to speed up. Now, I think when you put this into context around some of the debate around large language models and ChatGPT, that quote's incredibly relevant. The development of this technology will continue to increase at pace, but so must our work to make sure it's fair and responsible. And at Microsoft, we are hugely committed to that. So the world today, on this call, whatever role you're in, whether you're in a core IT role or in a broader part of the business that you represent, I don't think you can escape a conversation about AI at the moment or the role of ChatGPT. It's a broad mainstream conversation now that can be heard on TV and radio programs throughout the day and in social conversations. But the AI and the innovation is occurring at a genuinely mind-boggling pace. And as I just said, it will continue to do so. We also see a huge adoption of companies adopting what's already available today across industry, and I'll talk about that shortly. But we also have increasing societal expectations around our use and responsible use of AI. And as we've seen in the headlines in the last few weeks, governments are also working hard to evaluate how they regulate AI and really look to the industry to partner with them on making sure it's responsible. So it's a very fast-moving picture and one that will continue to evolve. And hopefully today will give you some more information to ground you where we are today and what's available. And then the last slide from me before I just hand over to Sunita, I thought I'd just use this one just to remind us all when it comes to AI, it isn't new. And actually, if you look at some of these core industries on the slide, AI is already being embedded in the standard business processes of these industries. For those of us in the UK on the call, the solutions needed to help the NHS, AI is going to play a huge role in that. But it would be remiss to say that AI isn't already playing a role in healthcare when it comes to automating tasks and reducing admin burdens on teams. And you can see there's a healthy percentage of the healthcare systems of today already adopting AI. Retail experiences, whether it's better customer support, behavioral analytics, or AI-assisted shopping experiences with virtual rooms, is already happening at scale and at pace. When we look to financial services are always keen adopters of technology. One of the biggest areas for me here is the work that's been done on using AI for fraud detection right across the industry, and I think we'll continue to see that accelerate. And then one of the most exciting areas and probably one of the most advanced is manufacturing. And manufacturers have always looked at AI, machine learning, and robotics to improve efficiencies and manufacturing. So you can see at the bottom of the slide, the report that analysis comes from. It's well worth checking out. And in fact, the research that Stanford continue to publish on AI is a great way of staying informed on the broader development in the market. So that's it from me. I was going to hand over to Sunita, who's going to take you through the rest of the presentation. But just a huge final welcome from me, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the content. Over to you, Sunita.
Thank you so much, Richard. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here and talk to all of you about the buzz, the biggest thing that's going on in the space of AI right now, which is Azure OpenAI, which I'll explain shortly about why the Azure, what that brings to the table for all of you as our customers. But before I go into any of that, just a quick reintro from myself. I am the global AI sales and strategy lead at Microsoft. So I'm part of the Microsoft HQ team, working with our field teams as well as our customers worldwide on anything in AI within Microsoft, and more so now also leading the space of Azure OpenAI because of everything that's happening right now. So working very closely with customers on where we are seeing traction with the OpenAI models in Azure, in Microsoft, for our customers. So before I go into that, I wanted to set some context a little bit about, the a little bit of history of AI and the generative AI models that we'll be talking about today. So just as a quick intro, artificial intelligence, or AI, as it's called, the term itself was coined around the 1950s. So obviously the question is, did it exist before the 1950s? Absolutely, yes. It was there in the 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, the whole time. But the term was coined in the 1950s. And the idea behind AI is very simplistically to be able to replicate or even exceed human intelligence by bringing that kind of intelligence into machines. Obviously, the next question is, are we there yet? And the answer is absolutely not yet, right? So can we say that we have started, 100% mimicking or replicating human intelligence? No. But are we getting close? We are, with everything that's been going on right now with the models that are within artificial intelligence itself. So the first subset that I'll talk about within AI is machine learning. And machine learning is, in its very simple kind of definition, it's all about how do you get the machine to predict a future state based on information or data that you actually fed the machine with, so that it's learned from that data and then it predicts a future state. Again, it's a very simple definition of machine learning, or ML, as we refer to it as well. Another subset within that is called deep learning, and deep learning is more about how do you mimic the functions of a human brain, very much to do with neural networks. Think about it, acoustic wise, to be able to understand which is the voice, the main voice that you're hearing versus the background noise. All of this is part of deep learning algorithms itself. And then within that, we have this new family member now called generative AI. And generative AI is basically all about how do you generate new things using what the machine has learned using past or historic information or data. So if you look at the difference between machine learning and generative AI, one of them is all about predicting a future state. The other one is all about generating new things. But both of them, and the whole of artificial intelligence, is about how do you get the model or the machines to learn using data that you actually feed into it. And all the models that we'll be talking about, which are OpenAI models, Azure OpenAI models, all of them stem from this new family member of generative AI. So anything that you're hearing, DALL-E, GPT, all of these are actually generative AI models itself. So obviously, and without a doubt, there's just so much of buzz that's been going around, right? Everything from, Chat GPT through to, GPT-3 to DALL-E. And, one of my personal favorites is one on the bottom left here, where AI can now write its own computer code. And apparently that's great news for human beings. I'm not so sure about that because whilst we want to be talking about all of these things, and we are implementing these with companies and enterprises out there, we also want to do so in a cautious and responsible manner. So responsible implementation of anything in AI, and more so obviously also in Azure OpenAI, is really going to be key in everything that we do. So I'll talk more about that as we go along. But I think the main idea here is that for any critical systems, any systems that involves life or death scenarios, please do not let the machines be the final decision maker. It should be having a human in the loop to make that final decision. The machines can be there, the AI can be there to help you and give you recommendations, but not to make the final decision itself. So there's also, as I said, so many words and acronyms and everything floating around. I will try and decipher that as we move along as well to give an understanding of how they're different from one another. So as Richard mentioned, we have this partnership with OpenAI. OpenAI, the company that brought in these models. Microsoft, with its partnership with OpenAI, has now brought these models into Azure Cloud in Microsoft. So Microsoft's Azure Cloud now has these models in it if you apply for access to them. So the first one is GPT family of models. So in this case, I've highlighted GPT 3.5, which is in GA right now in Azure, so general availability for all our customers. GPT-4, which is a model newer to this and which has generated a lot of new buzz, has recently been announced to be in preview in Azure in Microsoft as well. So that's the other thing you want to look out for. That's where the advances are going towards. Lots of interesting and good stuff happening in that space. But the entire GPT family of models is all about text. How do you get the models to generate new forms of text based on whatever it has understood and learned from historic or past or data that it's been trained on? Codex is everything to do with code. So for example, how do you generate new forms of code? Again, with whatever the machine has already learned using past or historic information or data. So these two are already in general availability, as I mentioned. We have two other models that are there in preview right now in Azure. We have DALL-E, which is how do you generate images using text prompts? And I'm sure everyone at some point in time has played around with DALL-E, the free open source. There are many versions online that you can play around with. If you haven't tried it, you should definitely try it, or you should get access to it within Azure. And we have a playground there that you can actually go and experiment with all of these models on. The other one, which is in preview right now, also more recently announced within Azure, is ChatGPT. So ChatGPT has the word itself has created so much buzz by itself. It's important to distinguish how that is different to the GPT family of models. They're very similar, but they're also different because both of them have to do with text. That's how they're similar. But how they're actually treated to each other, and how they relate to each other, that's where the difference comes in. And I'll touch on that a bit later. But it's always better with examples, right? So here are some examples of some of these models and what they mean when I talk about text-based, code-based, or image-based. So this is the GPT family of models and ChatGPT. As I said, it's everything to do with text. So for instance, if I put in a prompt is like an instruction. Write a tagline for an ice cream shop. The response that we get back from the machine is we serve up smiles with every scoop. Now, this is actually a generated sentence. And how it has generated that is basically based on the the data that it's been trained on. So it's taken ice cream shop, it's taken tagline, and it's come up with the sentence by itself. As I said, Codex is everything to do with code, very specialized coding. So in this case, it was a very simple example, but this is the prompt fed in, and then create a SQL query for all the customers in Texas named Jane. This is your response back from the machine. Now imagine this in the hands of business users. It's a super powerful tool because now you're opening the doors for these people who have no idea about how to do SQL querying, programming, coding of any type. Yet they know their data, their business data so well, but they're not able to do basic data analysis or data mining of their own data. Now, this has basically opened the doors for such people because they're able to take a language that they're familiar with, like English or anything else that you're familiar with, and you're able to convert it into a SQL query, in this case, as an example. Now they can take this and they can mine their own data, they can do basic analysis, and in the age of AI democratization, this is where it gets very, very powerful. Then we have DALL-E over here, and I gave a prompt, obviously, because I'm based in Singapore. The prompt was a watercolor painting of the Singapore skyline, and this was the image that came back. And this is a generated image of a watercolor painting of the Singapore skyline. If I change this to a watercolor painting of the Singapore skyline in the night sky, obviously this image would be different. I've tried to reproduce the same image by using the same prompt over and over again in Azure in DALL-E, and every single time I get a different image back. So this is my favorite, so I just put it into the slide over here. But obviously DALL-E has very unique kind of use cases where it's being used in enterprises or organizations. Think about UX, UI engineers, think about product designers. That's where the image generation really kicks in. We can also take things really innovatively with healthcare companies using this for therapy purposes. Any number of possibilities can come out of the DALL-E itself. But the other thing I did promise is, to be able to break down ChatGPT a bit more, right? So if I think about ChatGPT and what it is, think about it in terms of chatbots or conversational kind of agents or wizards. That's where, ChatGPT's main effect is. In the back end, though, it is powered by something like GPT 3.5. In the case of Microsoft, it's actually powered by something called GPT 3.5 Turbo. So can the GPT family of models be used for more than ChatGPT? Yes, absolutely can do. But if you want this conversational human-like response agent, ChatGPT is really the thing for you over there. Just before I move on to some of the use cases and examples that we are seeing with customers worldwide, I did want to come back to the basics of Azure AI itself within Microsoft. So we're talking about, this entire suite of products over here, the 3 layers at the bottom. So we have applied AI services, we have our cognitive services, and then we have our ML platform or machine learning platform. So I want to bring your attention to our cognitive search, which is our search tool within our applied AI services. And this search tool is looking through unstructured documents, structured documents to be able to get to the answer that you're looking for. Takes you to the place where that answer is stored in any particular document, and you'll be able to find the answer to your question there. Form recognizer, if you're thinking about OCR capabilities, optical character recognition capabilities, form recognizer works like that, where it's able to extract information from documents, from PDF documents and other documents. It's able to digitize all that information, and then you can store all that digitized information either in a data lake or a data warehouse or wherever you want to store it, and then use it for any other insights or any other purposes that you want to use it for. I brought your attention to these 2 in particular for a reason for later when I go through some of the examples. But here is our cognitive services layer. Some of the ones I want to draw your attention to over here: vision, like computer vision, custom vision, face API, to be able to recognize faces. That's where vision really comes in. Speech, like speech to text, how do I convert audio to text and vice versa? That's where typically speech is used. And as part of our cognitive services, one of them is now Azure OpenAI service. So that's where it sits within our entire Azure AI stack. And as I said, we do have our ML platform, which is our Azure machine learning platform for predictive and deep learning purposes. That's where that'll really come into work with us. So if you think about, risk prediction, risk modeling, prediction, predictive analytics of any kind, Azure machine learning is really your go-to technology for any of that. Now, a lot of our customers ask, what do they get from an Azure OpenAI service? Now, as I mentioned, these are the models that I spoke about earlier, which are in Azure. And what this means is that once you get access to Azure OpenAI as a company yourself, you will have these models deployed within your Azure subscription, accessed only by you and secured completely in terms of data privacy, data security, and so on. So that information, either your data or the outcomes of your models, will not be shared back with any other entity outside of your Azure subscription. So as long as it's within your company, it stays within your company. And that's the purpose of bringing all of these models into Azure. The other thing that we have is, a lot of companies ask me, we have so many teams within our organization itself. How do I make sure that no one else has access to whatever I generate and vice versa? Again, using things like role-based access controls and permissions. That's how you make sure that this information is contained within the particular team that is supposed to have access to the information itself. So again, these are things to keep in mind. There are also built-in responsible AI features that are there as part of Azure OpenAI service, things like content filtering, abuse monitoring, to make sure that no harmful language, vulgar language, nothing outside of the organizational norms is being used, and everything is contained within the proper ways of working of the organization itself. Again, these are, things that are built-in features to make sure that it's in line with responsible AI principles. The other thing, as I mentioned, these two models over here, which I said are already in GA, they are in something called a gated GA, which means that as our customer, if you want access to Azure OpenAI, as I said earlier, you will have to fill out a form. And in that form, you will have to specify what is the Azure subscription that you want these models deployed to, which is your organization's Azure subscription. You will also need to tell us what are the use cases for which you are planning to use these models. And we have a gating team at Microsoft to look through that information to make sure that the use cases are not for any harmful intent and it's for good reasons only. If we find something is not in line with our responsible AI practices and principles, we will be denying the application itself. But in majority of the cases, as long as it makes sense for what you want to use these models and what are the use cases that you're planning to use these models within the organization, you will have access to these models. So there are a number of different things that we can do with Azure OpenAI. Like, the possibilities, the capabilities are limitless. Everything from virtual agents through to, question answer, through to writing assistance, semantic search. And many of these, for those who are hearing it for the first time, I will talk more about some of these later. But the possibilities are basically limitless. But there are 4 capabilities that keep emerging time and again with our customers. I want to point you to those 4. So content generation, summarization, code generation, and semantic search. So if I think about some of the use cases within content generation, things like how do you automatically generate responses to customer queries in a call center analytics scenario, right? You don't have to actually do it manually. You can see that Sunita, as your customer, as an individual, I need to hyper-personalize the kind of recommended product or service for her based on either her purchase patterns, based on a customer demographic, really getting in that hyper-personalization in there to generate content specifically for me as an individual customer of yours. You will also be able to do other kinds of content generation like personalized UI for your website. How do you automatically do that? Again, content generation kicks in. So anything where you want to automatically generate content, that's basically the idea behind content generation. Then we have summarization, and summarization is an extremely popular capability that we have within Azure OpenAI. So again, back to the call center scenario, think about it as, if you wanted to have a summary of the conversation support logs with your customers, finding out the trends, for instance, like in January, 95% of my customers were satisfied with the products or services that we have been offering. 5% of our customers have been dissatisfied. And this is a summary of the product or service that they are dissatisfied with. I can take that summary back to my product or service team and say, this is what we need to work on. So again, there are many different cases there where we can actually look at for a summary of conversation logs in a call center kind of scenario, but any other thing that involves summarization as well. Another example is when you have document summarization, right? If I have gone to any customer, I think one of the biggest pain points is whether it's financial services who come back and say they want to have legal document summarization or financial report summarization, or if I go into any kind of retail company and say I want to have this document summarization for compliance documents or any other kinds of documents, insurance companies with their compliance documents. Again, there are numerous number of things that you can summarize in terms of the documents itself. Also analyst articles, right? The number of times you've had huge number of analyst articles that a summary would be great for. Again, that can be used there. The other very, very popular one from a document summarization perspective is IT document summarization. And we're also guilty as charged for that because those things can get super complex very quickly. How do you get a summary of that information in a very quick and kind of consumable manner? Again, here, this is where summarization would really kick in. And if you have a huge presence in social media, again, trends, summarization, back to the hyper-personalization that I mentioned earlier. So Sunita, as a user, as a customer of ours, in this particular customer demographic, this is what seems to be trending right now. Getting that summary and then making sure that the right products and services are recommended to Sunita in a proactive manner so that she doesn't need to come to us. We can go to her before. That again is an idea of summarization over here. Code generation, if you have a large developer environment, if you have a huge need for converting code from one to the other. I gave a very simple example earlier of English to SQL, for instance. Many more things like that where you can convert code from one to the other, or else code documentation, or else, as I said, if you have a huge developer environment, something like the GitHub Copilot approach is also very, very popular for such customers. And then we have semantic search. And in semantic search, things like, how do I search for reviews of a specific product or service? Information discovery, knowledge mining, again, looking through all the documents that I have to be able to look for something in particular. Now, for those who are listening, I did mention cognitive search earlier, which sits outside of our Azure OpenAI service. It sits within our Applied AI services. So naturally, the next question is, when do I use that versus this, which sits within Azure OpenAI? And the answer to that is depending on the use cases that you're going to be looking at with us, right? So, for example, there are some customers for whom semantic search within Azure OpenAI works better, and then there are some customers with whom cognitive search as part of our Applied AI services works better. So it depends on the use cases, it depends on the documentation that we're looking at. And then we will make a decision on which one suits better for that particular use case. But each of these are within their own siloed capability. Now, if we talk about an end-to-end kind of scenario, think again about an end-to-end call center analytics. Again, this is just an example. Everything from classification through to sentiment analysis of your customers, understanding satisfied, dissatisfied, unhappy, angry, disappointed, whatever it is, entity extraction, summarization of all that call logs, call information, and then automatic email generation from content generation over here. Again, end-to-end, that's actually Azure OpenAI that can solve that as a hero product. Then we have something like, hyper-personalization customer 360. All the research firms right now, like Gartner, Forrester, everyone's been pointing, towards hyper-personalization being one of the biggest trends in any organization at this point in time. How do you make sure you're proactively able to go and recommend products or services to each individual customer? Again, everything from summarization of customer queries and trends through to search and automatic content generation for your customers. Again, boom, that's actually Azure OpenAI as the hero product there. And then business process automation, right? So when we think about business process automation, there are many different kinds of automation that we can look at. But the one which is very popular with many of our customers is document process automation. So think about PDF documents, right? If you have a lot of PDF documents, again, remember form recognizer that I mentioned before as the OCR capability, you can use that to extract the information from the documents, digitize all that information, use something like cognitive search or the semantic search from within Azure OpenAI to search through those documents to find whatever you're looking for, and then summarize it using Azure OpenAI again, using the summarization capability, and then store it in something like Cosmos or send it to a web application or a Power BI for insights. Again, end-to-end, this uses a number of different services where obviously the key is Azure OpenAI, but it does use these other things with it as well. The other very popular use case end-to-end, as I mentioned, is the call center analytics use case. So here we have a lot of customers calling in. You have a lot of audio files. You can use the speech service, which is one of the services that I mentioned within cognitive services. You're able to convert the audio files from speech to text. Now you can use Azure OpenAI either for summarization purposes or to be able to extract sentiments of your customers. Send all that information either to a Power BI for insights or to your CRM tool to understand your customers better, build that 360 view of your customers. Or if you're planning to get back to the customer with a response in a real life call scenarios call center kind of scenario, we can always take that information, parse through documents that you have internally and externally with semantic search within Azure OpenAI, and then use text to speech, the same speech service, but instead of speech to text, you use it from text to speech, convert it back to an audio file and send it back to your customers in an audio format. Now, what happens here is that this is a very important step because keep in mind that there are many customers out there in your customer base who may have different abilities, people who are not able to type, people who are not able to read. How do you make sure you cater to those people with responses back in the way that they're familiar with it? Make sure that you not only provide text services back to your customers, but also the text to speech to make sure they're also able to hear it in an audio format. So this is, again, one of the biggest responsible AI principles that we have within Microsoft, which is inclusiveness. Make sure you're inclusive in your responses in any AI technology that you use to your entire customer base, and you're not leaving someone out. So here are some snippets of examples of use cases. And, for example, this is for an insurance company where the customer is called in. This is an entire customer conversation dialogue that is over here. And, imagine having to read this when the customer is screaming in your ear at the same time, and you're actually trying to read this to understand what actually happened. It's quite stressful. Instead of which, you can actually use the following instruction to say, in 6 points, give me these six main things that I'm looking for. The response that you get back is the same 6 points in the same order. And for example, you can tell you everything from the sentiment of the customer, shaken up but okay, all the way through to how did the agent handle the conversation, was empathetic, again, that sentiment coming in again. Create a short summary of the conversation. This one sentence has a lot of value and information than having to read this entire paragraph over here. So again, keep in mind that this is important in a customer scenario, in a call center scenario. If you don't want the response back in English and you want it in a JSON machine readable format, no worries. All you need to say at the top in the prompt is please answer in a JSON machine readable format, and boom, the answer that you get back is in an output of a JSON. The other thing which I like, which is one of my personal favorites, is this one over here, where the input is actually in German. And what you're saying is generate a formal customer communication in English. Keep in mind, you're asking for a translation. Offer help at this email address. Be apologetic where possible. Use this as a time format, and please output in a letter format. What you're asking it to do is to content generate, because now it's able to create an entire letter in a letter format, with the time specifications that you mentioned, with the sentiment that you asked for. So we apologize for any inconvenience this may have caused, and then offer help at this email address. And the entire thing, as you can see, is in English. So it's done multiple things at the same time: content generate, translate, and bring in sentiment into the entire output itself. This is one of the examples where we're working with CarMax, and CarMax is a used car retailer in the US. And they basically needed a fast and efficient way to analyze customer reviews and provide very brief and meaningful summaries for each kind of car model that would aid in potential purchases for their customers. So we took about 11 years worth of car summaries, and we were able to create content, generate from scratch with recommendations to their customers on the kind of car models that they should be going for based on all of the summarized information. So again, this is the power of all of this. I don't want to go into this demo because I know Burak has a demo later, but I do want to say that we have many different technologies within Azure AI, right? A lot of different things that I've just showcased outside of even Azure OpenAI within our Azure AI portfolio. So naturally, the next question from our customers is, when do I use Azure OpenAI versus the rest of the Azure AI suite? And I would typically say that if you want to use a model with little or no training, because keep in mind that these OpenAI models and Azure OpenAI models have already been pre-trained on a huge amount of data set. So you don't need to actually train it further on anything from your own internal data at all. You can actually take it as it is and start running with it and use it on your own data to drive insights rather than to use your data to train the models. So that's a very important step. So if you want to use a model with little or no training, again, that's really where the Azure OpenAI service will be the hero product. If you need rapid prototyping and quicker time to market, and you want to be exploring the solutions and use cases that I mentioned above, again, Azure OpenAI is a hero product. And why do I keep saying hero product? Is because, as you have just seen, just with 2 examples previously, Azure OpenAI by itself is not going to be a solution. It is going to work in conjunction with the rest of our either our cognitive services or our applied AI services, as you've seen. So form recognizer, the cognitive search, the speech services, they're all outside of the Azure OpenAI service, but part of our Azure AI set of services. So there are many benefits of Azure OpenAI. I won't go through all of them, but I will say that the one that I do want to come back to, which is this one. So we want to obviously make sure that your data privacy and security is intact, and any outcomes generated from your AI, Azure OpenAI models are also intact. So the fact that everything is going to be within your Azure subscription is going to make sure that no data is leaked out, no information is leaked out from whatever you're generating using Azure OpenAI. So that is something just to keep in mind. The one question I get back based on my current role as a strategy lead is, what are next steps for Microsoft when it comes to OpenAI? And hopefully you've seen a lot of news around this in the recent times, but we have started integrating ChatGPT as an example with the likes of Bing. So Bing, our search engine, our real-time search engine, ChatGPT with its conversational kind of abilities, bring them together. The power is like super, because now previously you were not able to use in its raw form, you're not able to use Azure OpenAI models or OpenAI models to do a real-time search of any kind, because these models, as I mentioned, have been trained on data up to a particular cutoff date. So they only have idea about what went on in the world out there up to that particular cutoff date. Now, with the power of this integration with Bing, you're able to combine the forces of a real-time search engine with the likes of something more easy to interact with, like a ChatGPT. And that's where you can bring a real-time search with ChatGPT interface. We have something similar happening with Microsoft Teams, right? So Teams Premium, if you haven't heard about that, again, it's a very powerful tool where you can use ChatGPT integration with, it's basically ChatGPT integration with Teams to bring to you something like, after a Teams meeting, who gets assigned what kind of next steps. As an example, it can also tell you, for instance, that Sunita has been yakking away for the last 40 minutes on this one particular topic. This is the summary of everything that she has said. Again, that's a very useful thing to have. Hopefully not in my case, but in most cases out there. So again, Teams integration with ChatGPT is also super powerful. We've also started integrating it with Viva Sales and with Power BI. You'll have more information about the Power BI integration with ChatGPT as the year progresses. But imagine this now again with people who were either apprehensive or didn't have the knowledge of how to use Power BI dashboard and reporting tools. Now with just an English prompt, a text prompt, they'll be able to automatically generate some really interesting dashboards and reports. So that is where we are aiming to go with that. Again, it is all about opening up these capabilities to everyone out there, regardless of whether they have had the background or the technical information on how to do this. Now everyone will be able to do basic stuff with their own data. As I mentioned, a lot of good stuff happening on the GitHub Copilot. Again, if you have a huge developer environment, it's automatically able to show you things like, how does it start generating its own, code based on basic prompts that you feed into it. It's a very nifty tool for very advanced developers out there. And the more recent announcement that has come out is the introduction of the Microsoft 365 Copilot. Basically, I won't go through the video here because I do want to hand it over to Barak. But the idea here is that we have started integrating ChatGPT with the tools that I think most people are familiar with from Microsoft, things like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, to make life much easier for all of you. I'm happy to post the link to the video afterwards. It's also online if you want to take a look at that. But the power of that is amazing. So I would really encourage you to take a look at that. After I showed it to a family member of mine, I think one of the responses I got back was, so no one needs to do any work anymore. And that is not where it's intended to go with anything in AI. The main idea behind introducing all of this cool technology in AI is to, number one, democratize AI and basics of AI and data analysis to the hands of people who were previously not able to use this because of technical lack of knowledge of how to go about it, like SQL programming, coding, all of these things. The other thing is to make it more friendly to a whole bunch of people, where it can really and efficiently and effectively start helping you on your day-to-day activities, but it should not be used as a way to replace you to do all the work, right? So it's not that I can just sit back and say, AI, do your thing. I'm just going to sit back and just click enter at the end of it. No, please make sure that anything that you're getting out of these Azure OpenAI models in any way, shape, or form, or OpenAI models in any way, shape, or form, is always with a human in the loop, because the technology is new. We want to make sure that you have all the right corporate compliance and policies and everything in place before you click that enter. So do go through the outputs of all of this information. As we move along, hopefully that confidence level will increase. So that's where I do want to point out that humans are very much needed and still have to be present in the loop. With that, I just want to say that we have, a number of different companies, obviously, that we're working with. And if you're interested to explore any of the use cases that I mentioned earlier, or if you're interested in talking to us further about any of these things, do reach out. We have Burak on the call. We also have us on the call. So any of us are happy to help you with that. And with that, over to you, Burak.
Thank you, Sunita. Just quickly, Thank you, Sunita. Hi, everyone. My name is Burak. I'm working as a cloud solution architect for data platform and AI solutions, and I would like to just walk through a couple of use cases that Sunita explained verbally, and I just want to show the studio experience and a couple of use cases that you can utilize into your businesses. So once you get the access, you will have a very nice user experience with the studio that we will provide to you, and on the left-hand side, you will be able to see like the GPT-3 models and the ChatGPT as well. And from the deployment standpoint, there are too many models available to deploy, and you can easily create a new deployment to be able to select the right model for your use cases. And a lot of OpenAI models are available inside of Azure OpenAI, and you can easily deploy them and start using them with the playground that we are going to provide to you. So in the first example, what I want to showcase in here is I'm selecting the DaVinci model as a deployment model, and I'm using the text below to be able to ask further questions. Like you can think about providing more insights to the GPT models, and you can get answers like very easily. And if I quickly generate the answer about the question in here, it will just analyze the text and it will give us the exact answer that we're looking for. So basically with the document understanding, with the OCR processes and everything, you will be able to understand like what is the answer just in terms of the text you're going to provide to the OpenAI in the prompt side. The next example is going to be about like the summarization options. A lot of texts are sometimes really complicated or technical, or maybe sometimes you don't have time to just read the entire document. So in those kind of scenarios, you can easily analyze the texts and you can easily say that please summarize the following text as a prompt. And once you provide the text and the generated answer is going to just provide us the summary of the text below, and you can just make it longer or shorter in terms of the parameters. Like on the right hand side, you can just make it like you can include 100 tokens or more tokens if you like as an answer, and this is how we can interact with the GPT models like for the summarization kind of scenarios. The other example, which I find really interesting, sometimes the answers are mostly free text, and you can just, maybe shape the answers in a bit to make it more structured. Basically, with the prompt side, you can just say that, extract the following entities and you can just mention the format that you're looking for. And the entity extraction, I find it really interesting because entity extractions are sometimes really complicated with the natural language models. You should be able to train the models first and everything, but with the OpenAI GPT models, you don't need to train anything to be able to extract the most important entities, people names, or company names from the text below. So in the prompt side, also I'm just, giving the context that I'm looking for, and I'm just putting the companies and people and titles, subjects, to be able to get the answers, like get the responses like in order. So if I generate the answer, then OpenAI models are going to provide me the answers and extract the company names and people and title information. And also it will just, sort the answers in order in terms of the prompt definition. The other example, again, could be like Sunita was explaining the, possible scenarios like in her slides. And one of the scenarios that I'm hearing from the customers a lot is analyzing the sentiment of the feedback. And a lot of customers are interacting with their end users and they are receiving a lot of feedback. And they might need to just take some actions, like if they're receiving like negative feedback, or they might need to collect the, sentiment scores of the customer experiences. So on top, you can see like one of the feedback about the food that they received. So basically, like it's a long feedback, and we cannot just, say that by just reading the first sentence, it looks like, it is something negative. But if you read the full text, it is really positive actually, and we can easily analyze a sentiment score by just putting the prompt like give me the sentiment score and label of the text below. So it says like the sentiment score is 0.7 and the label is positive. But what I was looking for actually, like just receiving the score within a range, because like think about you're a company and your sentiment scores or the customer scores are just differentiating from 1 to 5. So if you just give the range in the prompt, and if you can just extend the prompt and saying that score the range, the score range is in between 1 to 5, then with a single prompt I can easily receive the answer. The sentiment score is going to be updated, adjusted in terms of the prompt definition, and the label itself is going to stay as positive because like the result was already positive, just the score was adjusted in terms of the prompt definition. So I believe that this is going to be really useful for the customers who wants to just, integrate the OpenAI APIs basic inside of their existing services and platforms, and they can just shape it with the prompt definitions. Like they don't need to just, recreate the models or retrain the models for the fine-tuning purposes. Again, like for the GPT models, like the other example is like the extracting the information, gathering the information from the OpenAI GPT models. Again, I'm using the same deployment model like the Da Vinci model, because like it depends on the scenarios, but it is the most capable one, like in terms of the complicated scenarios, I can say. So basically, I'm asking the question to list the following Microsoft products, and I just want to like learn the categories of the products below. So in the slides, maybe you may remember like there were different technologies, like for the AI or as a platform, we provide Power BI, Power Platform, and we have the Bing search. So basically, I just want to see the categories. And just at the bottom of the prompt, I'm just giving the hint again, and I'm just saying that this is the format that I'm looking for. I just want to see the service on top and then the category underneath. So if I generate the answer like really quickly, I see that the bot service is a part of our artificial intelligence solutions, and then Power BI is a BI solution, and the Microsoft Bing category is a search engine. So it works perfectly fine without, again, feeding the models at all. The other example, again, is related to the code generation. And I find it, again, really interesting because a lot of customers, like from the BI purposes, like if you're familiar with Power BI, some of the Power BI users are really non-technical, but just they want to just engage with the data, analyze the data a bit more, but they are not able to write queries at all. So in Power BI, we have the OpenAI integration, and without writing any single code, with the natural language prompts, you will be able to just receive the insights, and more of that, you will be able to just generate the DAX queries underneath. So with the code generation capabilities, you can generate SQL queries, you can just fix your different language queries, bugs, if you upload the queries in here. And as an example, I just wanted to create a SQL query with the prompt in natural language, and I just want to create a SQL request to find all users who live in California. And I just wanted to put this filter as a SQL, basically as a SQL syntax. So if I generate this query, what I'm going to see here is just, OpenAI is generating the SQL query. What I can do is I can just copy this query and apply to receive the answer in my database, or I can maybe edit this query by just editing the syntax. But as a user, like, think about, I'm really not able to just write the query or edit the query in there. So I just want to put one more filter, and I just want to sort the results according to the number of credits, and I just want to see the top 5 results as a result of this SQL request. So if I just regenerate the responses, then I will see like there is a couple of line edit to the query, and basically like I can manage SQL kind of interactions by natural language prompts. The last example that I want to show, I'm sure like a lot of people on the call have tried this ChatGPT models. So here in this example, I just wanted to run the empty example because I don't want to train or I don't want to put the system message to be able to just tune the assistant itself. So basically the question is just, related to the iron text claim processes. And I'm asking this question to be able to understand, how it works and what are the processes need to be completed to be able to claim the taxes in Ireland. So this is one example, but you can think about, as a customer, if you want to utilize this function into your business, you should maybe tune the assistant voice a bit, or you can also limit the end user interactions by limiting the topic itself. So in the next example, what I'm doing, again, I'm using the empty chatbot environment, and I'm just putting the system message by saying that the assistant is going to be helpful, creative, clever, and very friendly. And also I'm just put the commands related to the topics itself, and I'm just saying that just answer Microsoft product related questions and say I don't know if the questions are related to is not related to Microsoft products. So quickly, if I save changes and if I just send exactly the same question, then the answer is going to be like, I'm sorry, but the question is not related to the Microsoft products. So basically you can just tune the models, you can put your system messages, or even more, you can add a few questions and answers to be able to tune the assistant voices. And then I believe like this kind of interactions will tune the models in terms of your existing bot services and in terms of your company voice with the OpenAI API capabilities. So before finishing the event, I just want to say thank you for your attendance. And before you leave, if you can fill the evaluation form, that would be really, really awesome for us to shape the future webinars. And you can just directly scan the QR code in here if you like, or I'm going to put the link to the chat window, so you can just reach the form by using the link in the chat window. And again, thank you so much for your time. I hope you found the session useful, and please just fill the last question in the form if you want to get in touch with your Microsoft account team for the further discussions related to Azure OpenAI. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.